For years now, they've lived in legal limbo. 8,000 Navajo Indians living on disputed land in northern Arizona. Their problems, though, made even worse by a government policy that virtually forces them into a life of poverty.
Have you ever imagined what it would be like to be evicted from your house for no reason? Now imagine an entire community forced to leave their ancestral land. The Navajo and Hopi people, also known as Dine, were torn apart from the resources and heritage they've relied on for centuries, and currently face numerous climate threats that the American government can't protect them from. The Navajo and Hopi tribes have been left to fend for themselves on barren, parched land, with a million unkept promises and absent authorities. Why, you might ask? We're here to reveal the powerful and selfish forces behind this forceful relocation. This is the story of how Native American Indians were thrown into chaos and climate crisis under the guise of progress. These people have lived in the American Southwest region for centuries, naturally developing a bond with their land. In fact, these lands and the agriculture there is sacred to them, integral to their spiritual and cultural beliefs. They consider the Arizona land and Earth in general to be a living entity, a big part of their identity. The day-to-day activities in their lives, such as sheep herding and weaving, are heavily reliant on the land's resources. For these people, the land is a source of sustenance and spiritual guidance. Any disruption to their relationship with the land, such as forced relocation, threatens not only their physical well-being, but also the preservation of their cultural heritage and identity.
Whatever it's on earth is, some of it is our food, and some are medicines, and that's how we live on.
The two tribes of Navajo and Hopi coexisted in these lands peacefully until the 20th century, when tensions began to surface. Acting as a mediator, the U.S. government introduced the Navajo-Hopi Land Settlement Act of 1974, presenting it as a resolution to these intertribal disputes. This act divided the land between the two tribes, claiming it was a necessary step to resolve the impertinent conflicts. But deep down, it was clear that this was done for other people's benefit, not just to resolve conflict. You should know that the lands in question weren't just agriculturally rich, but also had wells of natural resources. And this opportunity to fill their pockets didn't go unnoticed by the powerful elites in play. The whole resolution narrative was basically just a facade. It shouldn't come as a shock that the forced relocation had a lot of adverse effects on the people, including economic hardships and cultural dislocation. The Office of Navajo and Hopi Indian Relocation, ONHIR, an organization specifically established to oversee this process, faced intense criticism for its handling of the relocation efforts. It felt like nobody actually cared for the well-being of the people. The narrative of resolving tribal disputes was almost like a pretext for exploiting valuable resources under the land. As the dust settled, the displaced communities were left to fend for themselves, facing new challenges in unfamiliar territories every day.
Let's talk a little bit more about what stress means. In the Navajo case, it translates into extreme depression, and extreme depression which is afflicting the elderly, both men and women, and depression which is also afflicting younger Navajo women.
As ONHIR went ahead with the displacement, or as they call it, relocation, some sharks jumped in to stake their claims over all the wealth the Arizona lands were hiding. Approximately 1.8 million acres of land that most people thought was barren actually held a lot of wealth, coal and uranium.
We don't quite understand what it was all established, but the consequences, what the mining industry has brought forth wasn't really noticed until years later.
On the Navajo Nation, they've extracted uranium, they extract oil and gas by fracking, they extract coal.
One of the most prominent names among these corporate giants was Peabody Coal. You can't miss the irony in that name. Now, rumor has it the company needed unrestricted access to this land, and what better way than to just send all the inhabitants away? It was too great of an opportunity to pass up. Peabody and its allies worked silently behind the scenes, lobbying, funding campaigns, and whatnot. All they required was for the government to send the people away. And so, as the dying people packed up whatever they could and moved to places far away, corporate machineries rolled into the vacated land. The once quiet, peaceful area was soon transformed into a full-fledged industrial zone, ready to excavate the earth for energy resources. The rich resources under safeguard of the tribes were succumbed to fuel the ambitions of corporations with no regard for the cultural heritage left behind. Now, obviously, these companies had the government's support. Agencies sworn to protect the tribes were actually accomplices in these betrayals, all for the profits they would gain. Federal agencies gave their support in secret meetings, meanwhile trying to convince the public that the forced relocation was absolutely necessary. But we all know that this was never about peace. They hardly let any reports or news clips of the displaced people come to light. They were absolutely devastated. The cries of the displaced echoed unheard in the halls of power, lost in the noise of machinery in progress.
My kids sleep on the couch, on a small couch, on a bunk bed, and some sleep on the floor.
9 people live in this one room.
Yeah, there's 9 of us, 7 kids, and then me and my husband.
As things started to calm down, the displaced people received token compensations, barely anything compared to what they were owed, and a measly dime compared to the billions of dollars worth of profit the companies were earning. And so, in the name of progress, an entire culture was uprooted. The wealth was never shared with those who actually owned the land. It was quietly siphoned away.
Imagine growing up in a place where fixing a broken window is a crime, where people live by the light of kerosene lanterns because the government forbid installing electricity or running water. This is not some third world country. It's right here in Arizona, a disputed no man's land.
But the misery of the dying tribes didn't just end with relocation. The new area they were sent to was barren with almost zero agricultural resources. They had no shelter from the scorching sun and had to live a life of droughts and dust storms, with the climate crisis getting worse every day. According to the New York Times, tribal nations have lost 99% of their historical territory. Where they live now is more vulnerable to extreme weather, adding to the debate over how to address racial injustice. Homes destroyed, people forced to give up their savings, their livelihoods, shoved into a life of poverty. All a classic case of federally administered racial injustice. Ecosystems collapsed, water bodies tainted, and the sacred connection between the earth and its people severed. For those living this harsh reality, a question lingers, whispered in the desert winds. How far will powerful entities go to profit no matter the cost? And who will be the next to pay the price?